Hello, Elegant Marketplace users. It's Andrew Palmer from Elegant Marketplace, and I've got the pleasure of introducing to you today Harry Jackson. Now, he's got a couple of roles. He's product owner in Bold Grid, which is a whole suite of products, and also with Web Ventures, who recently acquired elegantmarketplace.com as well. They've just acquired W3 Total Cache. So what I wanted to talk to Harry about today, apart from his work on make.wordpress.com in the marketing department there, or as a volunteer in marketing, is what's the benefit of caching and why should we use W3 Total Cache? So Harry, W3 Total Cache, what's that about?
Well, it's a WordPress performance optimization framework. It's basically one of the most comprehensive caching plugins on the market today. You know, it's been around for quite a long time, and we're excited to have it as part of our product offerings now.
Sure. When I hear comprehensive, like every other user, because I'm not particularly a programmer or a coder or anything like that, I've done my bits of code in the past, I kind of think comprehensive, could be complicated. So really, if you can just take us through, I know it's not that complicated to be honest, but if you can take us through a little screen share of what you've done with it and what our users can do with it, and then we'll maybe talk about what's going on with W3 Total Cache and Elegant Marketplace.
Sure. Yeah, I do know that when you get to Total Cache, sometimes the interface can be daunting, but you know, just keep in mind, we do have the general settings page because those are the basics. That's all you want to go through. And the best approach is enable the things, run some tests. If it's not working as good as you think it could, you could try to disable a few of the more advanced things like minify or database cache. Because if you're using like a shared server with limited resources, those disk-based caching methods may not be the best for you in some cases. So something like minify might actually hurt the performance if you're running on a shared server using disk as your caching method.
Well, certainly I've experienced with page builders, you know, when page builders have built in JavaScript minify and CSS minify, especially when you're editing and you're live editing using a visual builder or something like that, you know, the minify JSS or CSS rather has caused a few issues with galleries not appearing as they should on the live site. So I kind of always say to people, turn those off if you're, especially if you're using a caching plugin or if you're using server-side caching. But basically, W3 Total Cache to me would be something where you're in a shared environment or you've got your own VPS and you don't really want to do server-side caching. You'd rather want to do some kind of caching on the site as well to make sure it's nice and speedy. And especially for e-commerce websites, it's really important to me to make sure that the cart isn't cached too heavily because people are updating it all the time, and making sure that the site as itself runs really, really fast. So if I'm searching for a product or reading through a blog post and there's large images, or I'm going to, for instance, a photographer's site or a wedding site or a florist site or something like that with loads of images on, I think that's where a caching plugin can help. What do you reckon?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and you could just enable the basics as long as you have either PHP, FPM, or some kind of opcode caching on your server, and maybe an in-memory store if you're running a VPS like Memcached or Redis.
Sure.
And Total Cache works with those out of the box. They're pretty easy to configure. You just select the memory store in a drop-down, and you know, things just take off. You know, the basics is you want to make sure you enable page caching, which just makes an HTML version of all your pages. And WooCommerce and Total Cache play really well out of the box together. Back in the day, you used to have to exclude the WooCommerce session, but you don't even have to do that these days. You can just enable page caching, object caching, and you'll be off and running.
Really? So it doesn't affect the cart at all or anything like that? It makes it run faster, and all the communications between PayPal, Stripe, or whatever, whether you're using Braintree or whatever kind of payment gateway you're using, that's okay, is it?
Yeah. We actually,
yeah,
one of the most recent Web Ventures acquisitions, the WeForms, I actually helped build that site in the checkout process, and we're using WooCommerce and Total Cache, and didn't have to do anything fancy. It just works straight out of the box.
Fantastic. Yeah. Well, we're using easy digital downloads on Elegant Marketplace, and we'll be testing out W3 Total Cache in the coming weeks. But this, this announcement really has only just been made at the last WordCamp Phoenix, I think. Although it's been in the family for a little while, like us, we've been in Motion hosting family for now nearly 3 months. I mean, since December, and it's flown by, I've got to say. Working with people like you guys, it's been a pleasure. But the thing is, what I like about it is that we can introduce people to these new plugins or these offers and make sure that people are actually quite aware of the fact that Elegant Marketplace is moving more into the WordPress plugin sphere. And because of that, InMotion obviously have, with Web Ventures, they're buying lots of plugins as well, and lots of there's things down the line that obviously we're not allowed to talk about, but we kind of know what's going on in the future, so there'll be some more plugins here. But with W3 Total Cache, can you just take us through a quick run through, share screen, and just have a little run through of what those basic settings are, and maybe even a couple of more complex ones?
Sure. So this is just the regular dashboard of Total Cache, and in most cases, what most users would want to do, if you don't have any customized settings set up on your server, if you don't have like customized memory pools, or you're running Xcache or APCU or something, you won't even need to dive into the other settings unless you really know what you're doing. But for the most part, as you see, we have a preview mode. You can use that, and you'll enable the preview mode that allows you to test configuration settings, which is especially important for something like Minify that might actually break your theme. Sure. If your theme wasn't developed with the standards that Total Cache looks for. Right. But in most cases, like I mentioned, you just want to select, like your page caching. And as you see, I've got disk and basic and enhanced available to me. You could also install services like Xcache or APCU. I have Redis set up on this machine, just running it through a TCP port, and Total Cache just connects to it as simple as selecting it from a drop down.
Okay, cool.
And you can enable Minify. I just usually leave it on the basic settings just to see how things are going to work.
Sure.
And then it notifies you. In some cases, if you have PHP FPM, the PHP extensions for OpCache won't be available to PHP. So this may look like it's off, but if you know that your PHP FPM is running, it shouldn't be a problem. That's just something that PHP is not able to detect properly, but it will still totally work fine. And then here's two that can be actually dependent on what kind of resources you have on your server. The database and the object cache, those depend completely on how your theme and any dynamic content plugins that you have are coded. If they're not coded with object-oriented program in mind, it won't work as well for enabling object cache, and it might actually be detrimental to your performance. Same thing with database cache. It depends if you're a MySQL server, if it's tuned really well. Database cache might not help. It might not hurt either, but for the sake of this demonstration, I'll just leave them enabled.
But if it, just to interrupt you there, saying if it does break your site when you see how it's going, when you turn that off, it just fixes the site right back up again, right? So there's can't do any damage to your site. Yeah. I think that's with caching plugins or caching optimization, people get a bit worried. I mean, one of my jobs that I do away from Elegant Marketplace is making sure websites are fast. So, I've used W3 Total Cache. Certainly, it's one of my top 4, that I will use, depending on the server, depending on the host. But people are always worried, oh, well, I turn this on and it broke my site, and will it break my site if I turn it off? And the answer is no, of course. So carry on.
Yeah, correct. There is nothing irreversible that happens here. At most, when you enable stuff in Total Cache, you might get some htaccess rewrite rules added to your file, but that's easy as probably anything in WordPress. The most you would have to do, you could rename it and create a new one, and then just go to your permalinks and resave the structure, and all is back. Or you could just delete the information from the file if you know what you're looking at. Sure. It's pretty easy stuff once you actually get into it.
Sure, and we're aiming at web developers here, really, and web developers should, they've got a duty of care to make sure that they understand what caching is all about, and one would hope that a web developer will know what an htaccess file is and how to,
Yeah, and we definitely we also provide free support on the WordPress.org forums. So if anybody had any questions or ran into a problem, all they would have to do is send us a quick message. You can even get support for writing the plugin too, if you're a pro user. But if not, we still offer support for the free users as well.
Sure.
All right. And then finally, you got browser caching. That's probably one of the most important pieces here, because when you enable browser caching, it just tells the person that's visiting your website, you can save these images because they're not going to change. So the next time you load the website, it's instant because the resources are loaded from the local computer and not the server itself.
Got you.
Yeah. And then we've also got some integrations with several different CDNs. We use both pull and push origin servers. So you can set it up however you want. If you want, your website on your server to be the authority, and every time you make a change, it updates and pushes out to all of the CDN locations that you have. And we recommend StackPath. However, we do have integrations with, as you see, CloudFront over S3, Simple Storage Service, Google Drive, Azure Storage, Rackspace. So there's a number of different integrations there. And we actually offer premium services. If this isn't something that you're familiar with or comfortable setting up, we can do it for you as well. We have a wonderful support team that's willing to help. However, there's also, in the general settings, there's a section if you have Varnish running and it detects a reverse proxy, you can set that up pretty easy. It's a simple click and select your server. Something we recently added to help everybody out, lazy loading. That's where it defers your images. If they're not part of the visual that loads when your page renders, they don't load until they get within a certain distance. We're actually currently looking at ways to improve that, and we're possibly going to allow people in Pro to select what that pixel count is before the images will start loading. Because
I think that's one of the most important things about caching that people don't really realize is just enable lazy loading. It doesn't matter what caching plugin you're using, even if you're using Jetpack, lazy loading built in. I'm glad that you have built in lazy loading to W3 Total, because it wasn't in there, was it? How long has that been in there?
We just added it last fall. I can't remember the exact date. It was probably around October or November.
Yeah, so it's recent. It's good.
Yeah. And interesting story. I don't want to get a sidetrack, but we're in progress right now. Frank from Auto Optimize reached out and started an initiative about 2 months ago for us to standardize the way that lazy loading is excluded with data source attributes and CSS classes. What's interesting about that is because we're talking about a bunch of competitors here, everybody from WP Rocket to any plugin that has lazy loading as a feature. Right now we have a Slack workspace where we're all working together to make sure that we standardize this. And we've even commented on some tickets because, as you know, WordPress is introducing lazy loading into core soon. So that way, so we're trying to standardize it so that theme and plugin developers, when they don't want their theme or content resources lazy loaded, they just have to add the data source attribute to skip the lazy loaded or the CSS class, and it will just be excluded from that.
Perfect. So when you've actually completed that, can you get in touch with all the mobile phone company manufacturers and say, can we just have the same plug, please? You know what I mean? Because you guys will know how to work together. We've solved it on lazy loading. We can solve it on every mobile phone in the world. Because how many times do you go to a phone and say, right, I haven't got the right charger for that? That's crazy. But joking aside, it's a great thing that that's the whole point about the WordPress community, isn't it? That's why we're part of it, and why I'm part of it, certainly, is that it is completely about community. It's about working together, making sure that we're all working to the same standards.
Yeah. Open source in general has that same philosophy, but I feel like WordPress has a extra special commitment to it just because, the WordCamps, I've actually seen you at US this past year. Those are some of my favorite things to do because you get with like-minded individuals that love the same things you do, and that's all we do is talk WordPress.
No, it was great meeting all you guys at WordCamp. It was. We're not going to be able to do that for a while by the look of it, but we'll go off that subject for a second because it's just. But okay, so you can even have a look at your usage statistics, and if you download the free plugin, you can just go pro from the free plugin as well.
Yeah. You would upgrade directly in the plugin itself. Something that we're introducing as part of this promo, we are going to be offering checkout outside of the plugin because, you know, I don't want to let the cat out of the bag, but we're offering the new developer license strictly because of the discussions we've had. You know, Total Cache has always only offered a single site license. So this is something new that we're trying. Thank you. Yeah.
Well, thank you. Thank you for agreeing because it was, you know, I'm all about a deal. You know what I'm like. I'm all about getting people the right deals. And also by doing a deal, we can say to people that, you know, this is a deal that you can't miss. It's also the power of Elegant Marketplace getting together with InMotion Hosting, becoming part of that family. You know, so we're using family, you know, a lot, but it's true family. Everybody I speak to at InMotion and Web Ventures, we're all part of the same team, and it's awesome, and I love it. And I'm saying, listen, I want this on there, I want that on Elegant Marketplace, I want that on Elegant Marketplace. If we can't put it on Elegant Marketplace, I want a special deal. And, you know, and we've done it. So anyway, got on to the, and we'll give the offer later in the conversation, and certainly send out a few emails on that and drive people mad. So you've got different web servers as well. What's that all about?
Well, here in the statistics, this is actually just a pro feature. So in order to utilize it, you would have to upgrade. Okay. But it allows you, if you know the path of your web server logs and things of that nature, you can actually provide those to Total Cache, so your web server logs will come out along with your statistics for your hit rate and your caching rate and all that. And then something that somebody that mentioned a while back, talking to me about what fragment caching is, and I was explaining. I believe we had a conversation about it as well.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
it's probably one of the most underused pro features of Total Cache. You know, but the people that I am familiar with that are utilizing it, it's very effective. You know, Fragment Cache it's a specialized form of page caching, and where you break the pieces up using the WordPress transient system. You can group transients basically by creating your dynamic functions. You just wrap them with an HTML comment that's called an mfunc code, and that lets it know that these different pieces have different times to live. So the page cache can be 24 hours, but then you can have your comment cache wrapped with in fragment caching and using a in-memory storage like Redis. Your comments can refresh every 30 seconds or a minute, while your page doesn't refresh but once a day.
Sure, and that's really useful for blogging websites, isn't it? Because the content itself will be fast, and also the comments will be up to date.
Yep,
exactly. Is as soon as a comment or a moderator allows a comment to go on, it will be as live can be. You know, within seconds. So that's really cool. Yeah. So what we got here? We got enable get Google Page Speed Dashboard widget. Licensing we all know about. Pasting the license and verify the license key. That'll do.
Yeah. And once you check out and get a license key, this is where you would apply it just to authenticate your pro version. And as soon as you do, everything switches to pro. It's pretty seamless with Total Cache. Now, in the miscellaneous, this is where we have a bunch of settings that don't really have enough place to have their own section. So like you mentioned, it's the Google page speed. If you hop over to Google, you can create an API key and set it up so that you can see your page speed right in your dashboard. There's also an option to show it per page in the admin bar. So say if you're not on your home page and you're on one of your landing pages or a lead form page, you'll actually see what those page ratings are for your desktop and your mobile performance.
Very cool.
Yeah, it's really helpful, especially if you have marketers that don't understand the idea of optimizing images and making them as small as possible. You know, one image can throw the entire page off and make, you know, your score plummet in performance.
Listen, I know that too well. Even developers who send in their developer issues. So listen, developers, 100 by 900 for a featured image, and it should be less than 128 kilobytes, not 5 meg. So that's.
But we want the image to pop.
but no amount of caching can help oversized images. You know, you've got to optimize the images once you develop them down and the site's done. But I see so many, especially as I say, photography sites, restaurant sites with their great images. 11 megabyte images the photographers send us and say, oh yeah, we want this put on as it is. No, that's not going to happen. So I've got enable file locking. What's that about?
Well, if you have the right system, if you have your network file system set up so that you can enable file locking, this can provide better performance. This is just for your diehard system administrators that have really dug in and have their own customized systems built to their needs. And it's just something, you don't have to use it. As you see here, if your host environment does use a network-based file system, you can optimize your disk enhanced page and minify disk caching so that it works better with it. Now, I mean, these are all things that you can try if you're not 100% sure how your server's set up. But in most cases, you just want to leave them disabled if you're using a vanilla VPS or shared hosting account.
And I think the key is that when you're setting up a caching plugin, there are many out there, and they're all as good as they can be. I like W3 Total Cache. I put it on a website the other day just to do some testing, obviously, and kind of learn it. But what I find with all developers, we're a little bit lazy. We don't want to read the manual. We don't. But if we read the manual, our lives improve. I've always said to people, read the manual, please. This is one of the plugins that you really do have to read the manual. And there's extensive documentation out there. I know there is. I know that you've been working on documentation as well, and knowledge base. And that's one of the reasons why now is the right time to put this out there, because the knowledge base on it, say a year or 2 years ago, wasn't as good as it could have been for ease of use and stuff. But, we've got a really good plugin here that will help people make more money, because, a faster site means that people will stay on the site for longer. And they need to read the manual just a little bit, or just enable the simple settings and see how it goes.
Yeah, it's something I would definitely like to point out. We do maintain documentation inside the plugin. We populate this straight from our GitHub wiki. As you see, we have plenty of documentation built in. It's in WordPress's standard help pull down. However, because it's so elusive, it's a lot of people don't realize, because that's one of the complaints I see on the forums, that we don't have enough documentation. And as you see, we do have it built into the product, but it's not as easy to find as we would like it to be.
No, exactly. So as long as you hit the help button up in the top right-hand corner there, you've all the documentation's there. And certainly, when people buy this, there's a website for it, and the docs will be there as well. So it's always good.
Yeah.
It's great. I mean, I'm really impressed. What sort of, from a non-cached website, what sort of improvements percentage-wise do you reckon we can see with W3 Total Cache?
I mean, it has a lot to do with the way your site is built, what your content strategy is, how your pages, like you mentioned, you can, if you're using page builders that have their own minification or their own caching systems. I mean, there's a number of factors, but what we usually see is anywhere from 50 to 100%, 150% performance improvements.
Wow.
I've seen sites that start at 4 megabytes page weight for one page. And, that's as simple as, hey, let's take these images and let's edit them and make them the right size for where they're being used.
Sure.
And you can use things, simple JavaScript to make sure that if, say, you're in tablet mode and you need a larger version of the picture, that can be possible. And it can also, you don't want to have detrimental effects on your mobile and your desktop performance just because your tablet version needs a different size.
I got it.
And even recently, I've seen a lot of people skipping the media queries for tablet and just doing either a mobile or a desktop version as well. That's something that's been gaining popularity recently, because the way the tablet orientation is, your images have to be so much larger than they would for a desktop or a mobile version. So
depends. I've got a client that doesn't, he owns a few restaurants that I look after for him. He doesn't have a computer and does everything on an iPad. And it's always the latest iPad, but never looks at it in landscape.
That's interesting.
I know, it's really weird. And he uses it, sends me emails on it and menu planning on it and sends me images and stuff like that, but only ever uses that iPad in portrait mode. It's weird. And I've tried to educate him, but it's just not worth it. So basically, we've done it, haven't we? We've shown the benefits of W3 Total Cache. I suppose we better say something about the offer. What do you reckon?
Sure.
What is it? What's the offer?
Well, for the first time ever, we're offering a 10-site license, and the license would normally be $500, and we're offering a Elegant Marketplace only, a 50% off promotion. So you can get 10-site license for $250.
And that's like an annual recurring, right?
Yes.
So it doesn't go up, doesn't do what a lot of people do and say, okay, you can buy it now for this price and whatever. That's a forever annual recurring 10-site pro license.
Yes, that is correct.
I think we can end the conversation there. Thank you very much. Seriously though, it's a phenomenal offer, it really is. And I very much appreciate that I didn't have to beat you up too much for it, frankly. So I'm very, very happy with that. And I thank you for your time and I thank you for your offer. And I can't wait to send out the email to all our users. I'm really grateful for your time.